Chair, and I do believe we are live, so we can go ahead and get started. We do have quorum this evening. We are currently missing Councillor Hutchison, who hopefully will be joining us shortly. Joining us from staff are Tim Park, Director of Planning Services, James Barr, Manager of Development Approvals, Megan Robidoux, Intermediate Planner. We have Blair Johnson on as host, and I am Elizabeth Fawcett, Committee Clerk. We also have 2 representatives for the file this evening and currently 2 members of the public in the gallery. And with that, Mr. Chair, I'll hand it back over to you.
Great, thank you very much, Ms. Fawcett. Welcome everyone to Planning Committee. Tonight we have 1 public meeting, and to get us underway, I'm going to read the notice of collection, which gives a bit of detail on how this meeting will be conducted. So if you're following along with your agenda, this is page 2, notice of collection. Personal information collected as a result of this public meeting and process is collected under the authority of the Planning Act and will be used to assist in making decisions on this matter. All names, addresses, opinions, and comments may be collected and may form part of the minutes, which will be available to the public. Questions regarding this collection should be forwarded to the Director of Planning Services. The purpose of the public meeting is to present planning applications in a public forum and to give the public an opportunity to make representations in respect of the proposal as required by the Planning Act. Following presentations by the applicant, the meeting will be opened up to the public for comments and questions. Persons speaking at the meeting are requested to give their name and address for recording in the minutes. Additionally, interested members of the public can email the committee clerk or the assigned planner if they wish to be notified regarding a particular application. And the planner's email is just the next page on, again, for anyone who's in this document. No decisions are made at public meetings concerning applications. An exception to this rule is combined reports, which consolidates public meetings and comprehensive reports. These applications are deemed by staff as straightforward and routine. Public meeting reports are provided to inform the public of all relevant information. After the meeting tonight, staff will be considering comments made by the public and their further review of the application. When this review is complete, a comprehensive report will be prepared, making a recommendation for action to this committee. The recommendation is typically to approve with conditions or to deny. Then makes a recommendation on the application to City Council, who has final say on the applications. Following a council decision, notice will be circulated in accordance with the Planning Act. If a person or public body would otherwise have an ability to appeal the decision, Council of the Corporation of the City of Kingston to the Ontario Land Tribunal, but the person or public body does not make oral submissions at the public meeting or make written submissions to the City of Kingston before the bylaw is passed, the person or public body is not entitled to appeal the decision. So, in short, we welcome your participation, and there are multiple ways to do that this evening. So as I mentioned, this is a public meeting and there is only 1 file. It's 2685 Creekford Road. And I'll have staff introduce further from there.
Thank you through you, Mr. Chair. Can you hear me okay? Awesome. Okay, so notice was given in accordance with the Planning Act as detailed in the public meeting report. 1 piece of written correspondence has been received regarding the application, which was included in the agenda package. This is a statutory public meeting held under the Planning Act. The purpose of the public meeting is for the applicant to present their proposal to the public and Planning Committee. The format of the meeting allows members of the public and Planning Committee to ask questions of the applicant regarding their proposal and gives the applicant an opportunity to respond to those questions. As part of this public meeting, planning staff have prepared a public meeting report summarizing the proposal. It should be noted that no recommendations or decisions are being made this evening regarding this report. Planning staff are in attendance this evening to record the questions being asked of the applicant and to address technical questions regarding the planning process. The questions asked by the public and Planning Committee, along with any written submissions, will be addressed by planning staff within the comprehensive report. After the technical review and assessment of the proposal by the city has been completed, planning staff will bring a comprehensive report with recommendations back to Planning Committee at a future date. Thanks.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Ms. Robidoux. And now to the applicant to speak to the file. I believe it's Ms. Wood. Hi, Ms. Wood. You have the floor.
Good evening and thank you very much. My name is Jennifer Wood and I'm a planner with VO10 Planning and Design representing the applicant this evening, PlazaCom, who's seeking applications for official plan and zoning bylaw amendment for 2685 Creekford Road. Next slide, please. So the property is located in the Catarrock Way, Westbrook neighborhood. It's near the intersection of Gardner's Road and Creekford Road. The site is just west of the Catarrock Way Business Park, where you'll find a mix of business park uses, light industrial uses, a number of existing complementary commercial uses, as well as the Invista Center recreational facility. The site's very close to Highway 401 and is within 600 meters of transit, including the Invista Center Park and Ride. Next slide, please. The property is currently vacant and is 1.47 hectares in size. It's got roughly 145 meters of frontage along Creekford Road. Immediately west of the site is an industrial garage and workshop and sand dome. To the south of the site is an existing office building. To the north is currently vacant, and to the east are various industrial uses, including manufacturing and warehousing, as well as some commercial uses. Next slide, please. So the purpose of the applications is to permit the development of this site with 3 new buildings. Building A, which is on the right-hand side, is a 1-story convenience store and gas station. It would include a quick service restaurant and an associated drive-through lane that runs along the rear of the building and then turns along the east side of the building. A total of 23 parking spaces are proposed for this use, as well as a dedicated loading area. Building B is proposed in the west side of the site. It's a 2-story office building containing roughly 18,000 square feet of office space. And building C is proposed in the south side of the site, and this is a 1-story office building containing 7 units that are roughly 2,000 square feet in size. A total of 110 parking spaces are proposed to accommodate the 2 office buildings. Vehicular access to the site is provided off of Creekford Road, roughly central to that frontage, as well as a second entrance from an existing city-owned entrance on the adjacent property to the west. There are pedestrian walkways proposed throughout the site to connect the 3 buildings to each other and also to connect the site to Creekford Road. And a dedicated garage storage area is proposed just west of building C, which would support the 2 office buildings. Next slide, please. The property is designated Business Park Industrial in the official plan. Business Park Industrial lands are part of the city's broader employment land base, and the goal of this designation is to develop attractive areas for prestige office and research and light industrial support uses. The business park designation also permits what are called complementary uses, which are uses that are typically more commercial in nature, but are intended to support the principal business park uses. And the official plan directs that complementary uses should represent up to 25% of development within business parks, so that the majority of the use of employment lands are for employment uses. The official plan does provide a list of permitted complementary uses. However, gas station is not included within this list. Next slide, please. So this is a list from the official plan, which outlines those complementary uses that are permitted in the business park industrial designation. These include office and business services, so things like print shops and equipment repair, daycare facilities, places of worship, hotels and conference facilities, restaurants, drive-throughs, banks and financial institutions, personal services, medical and paramedical uses, convenience commercial uses, public and private parks, parking lots and structures, and sources of renewable energy. So the convenience store and drive-through facility that are being proposed on the site are permitted complementary uses, but the gas station component is not. So we're proposing an official plan amendment to permit a limited range of automotive uses, including gas bars and car wash. So really limiting it to that particular automotive use and using that language to not open it up to a broader range of automotive uses. Next slide, please. The property is currently zoned service industrial M3. So the M3 zone is more of a traditional general industrial zone that permits uses like assembly plants, auto body shops, bulk storage, garages, contractor shops, industrial repair shops, these types of uses. So the current zoning really is not consistent with the official plan designation, which really contemplates more of a prestige office use and light industrial development. Next slide, please. So we're proposing a zoning bylaw amendment to rezone the property from the M3 to a site-specific business park zone. This will allow for the development of the proposed office buildings, which are not currently permitted in the industrial M3 zone. And then the rezoning will also bring the zoning into better conformity with the official plan and will better align with the business park permissions that apply to the site. In order to recognize that the official plan directs limiting complementary commercial uses to 25%, we're actually proposing to bring that language into the zoning bylaw amendment by capping the permitted commercial GFA to 25% of the total GFA of the site through the zoning amendment. So in doing this, the convenience store and the gas station may only occupy a maximum of 25% of the site's total gross floor area. And we're also proposing to allow for flexibility of construction phasing by including a provision in the zoning, site-specific zoning, that would permit a maximum of 400 square meters commercial GFA to be constructed before the principal use or primary use. Next slide, please. Further, in terms of the proposed zoning bylaw amendment, it would include a provision that indicates that the zone boundary, which you can see outlined in this slide on the image on the right, the BP-XX, those X's will become numbers once this is brought forward for potential approval. So essentially the zoning would say that that zone boundary is to be considered the property lines, which would simply allow for future land division after the site is developed and not resulting in technical zoning and compliance and having to come back in the future. Because the official plan contemplates light industrial uses in the business park designation, we wanted to ensure that the zoning could facilitate this. So the BP zone in the Kingston Township zoning bylaw doesn't permit light industrial in the business park zone, the BP zone. So we're proposing to add some light industrial uses to this site-specific zone, which I've outlined in this slide here. I would highlight, though, that we are proposing that these light industrial uses only be permitted within a building. So we're not running into any outdoor industrial activities because that's not the intent of the business park designation. And then as a final note, I just wanted to point out that there are no reliefs being sought in any of the performance standards of the BP zone. So the development and concept plan does meet all the requirements related to height and setbacks, parking, landscaped open space, and coverage. We're really just seeking to address the complementary uses. Next slide, please. So to summarize, the applications before you this evening are to permit the development of 2 office buildings and complementary commercial uses on the currently vacant site. The official plan amendment will permit a gas station as an additional permitted complementary use. The zoning bylaw amendment will bring the site's zoning into better conformity with the official plan by taking it from an industrial zone to a business park zone. And the site-specific zoning we're proposing will ensure that the complementary commercial development and component of this site is limited to a maximum of 25% of the site's total gross floor area. That concludes my presentation. I'd be happy to respond to any questions or comments. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Wood. So as a reminder to the committee, and if any members of the public are here to participate, we'll proceed by allowing members of the public to ask questions or make comments. And when folks do that, they could give their name and address, and they'll have up to 5 minutes each. And then we'll go to another member of the public for about 3 or 4 people, and then the applicant can respond directly to those questions and comments. Followed by that, committee will have a chance to ask questions as well. So Madam Clerk, are there any members of the public registered to speak or anyone here to do that?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and through you, we do still have 2 members of the public with us. So I'll just ask that should you wish to speak during this portion of the meeting, we will require you to raise your hand in Zoom. This is located in the center of your screen when you move the mouse over the Zoom window. I'm just going to give a couple minutes here to make sure that they're able to find the correct button to push. Again, if there's anyone who wishes to speak, please raise your hand in Zoom so we may call on you. Mr. Chair, we have no hands.
All right, then with the committee's approval, what I'd suggest is we go directly to committee. And if someone that's here was having technical difficulty, we could circle back to the public just to make sure, because usually there's at least one person. Is that okay with committee? Could I just see general nodding? Alrighty, so committee, it's your chance. We'll go 5-minute limit each to start. And if there are second rounds of questions, that's okay too. Any inquiries for the applicant about this project? Councillor Osanik.
Thank you. I don't know what my question would be, but I just wanted to tell Ms. Wood, I was on planning committee when we built this prestigious business park. And the reason why we made it like the Prestige Business Park is called is because we didn't want a gas station, because we've seen other business parks, further south on Gardner's Road, but all over the city that were supposed to be business parks for, office space, like the other 2 office buildings. And instead they've been, converted into more commercial space. And so, I'm really disappointed to see the gas station when we got a gas station right across the corner. And this was supposed to be a prestige, business park. I appreciate that 25% of the GFA to that complementary use, but, this is exactly why, we made this business park like this. And, even with restaurants, that sort of thing. Like you see the business park further south on Gardner's Road, that was supposed to be office space business park where Trillium Genesis Club is. And Trillium Genesis Club is surrounded by bars, right? Like restaurants in there, a paint store, commercial. And my question, I guess, would be, are you aware that the city of Kingston has had studies on our commercial land area, and that Kingston has more than enough of commercial land, which are retail space. And now this, with the convenience store and a gas station is all part of an expanded, use, like just more commercial retail, when our past studies have shown we already have a lot of commercial. And Councillor Hutchinson knows this, like we've been talking about this like for many, many years.
Ms. Wood?
Yeah, thank you for your question and commentary. Duly noted and through you, Mr. Chair. I think there were, and I personally didn't work on the projects and zoning applications south of here, but I do know the lands that you're talking about in the business park to the south. From what I understand, there were fewer restrictions in the zoning bylaw amendment passed for those lands that would not essentially restrict the timing or phasing of commercial versus employment development. And so what happened was there was a broader plan approved for a mix of commercial and business park industrial uses, except for the commercial came online first. And then limited business park industrial uses came on after the fact. What we're including in this zoning bylaw amendment is that a limited maximum commercial GFA can occur and can occur first, so that we don't end up with additional commercial development on the site beyond the convenience store before any of the employment uses are developed. And I do fully appreciate your concerns, and I think there are strong opportunities here through the office space that the developer does want to develop to achieve those prestige business park goals. And I think through the design, and certainly they've had interest from tenants to develop those uses. So the hope is that those office spaces can come online shortly after the gas station use. So it would be a true mix of that 25-75 split that the official plan contemplates.
So through you, Mr. Chair, my second question then is, now about the gas station built first, then that gives me another worry, because I was also on planning committee when we did a business park at the corner of Sir John A. and Counter Street, where I think it's an Ultramar. I'm not sure, it's an Esso maybe. Gas station is right there on the southeast corner of that intersection, but it was all brought to planning committee as a business park. I can't remember if it was a prestige business park or just a business park. And all they built on that site is the gas station. And so now I'm just hearing that phase one is going to be built first of the gas station. And so a question, like, I know staff can't answer questions, it's just a public meeting, but just my own thing for when the comprehensive report comes, right? That's a concern that I want to address, like, how many years will it then be for part 2 and part 3, so that we just don't have a gas station sitting on that corner, that the city residents, that the city can benefit from the prestige business park of office space employment uses that it was meant for. And I don't know, Ms. Witt, if you can say, like, does this mean 2 years when the gas station's put there? Like, what was meant by, like, shortly thereafter?
Yeah, and through you, Mr. Chair, we can certainly provide some additional information on expected timing of the construction of the office space after the gas station and convenience store.
Okay, great. Thank you. I just have another third question. And the only reason why I'm being so picky is because, like, we've been told as a council that our employment land uses, we don't have any more employment lands, right? And so there's a lot of pressure on council right now to expand, get more employment lands. And so here we had a prestige business park, got approved many years ago. It's just been sitting as a big rock pile all these years. And now it's going to be a gas station. So I'm just disappointed to hear that. But what was my last question then? So we do have a letter in tonight's package that staff have identified, and it's talking about, if maybe a residential use can be in there, which, is not, is just an idea to put out there now because we are in such a housing crisis, right? Was that ever talked about with the landowner? Like, was there any indication with that applicant, or was it just always commercial? Because we are doing some, official plan amendments with this package. And so maybe there can be an official plan amendment for, part B or C to be in a residential.
Yeah, thank you for that question. And through the chair, we reviewed that correspondence, and I think there were suggestions for maybe a mid-rise residential apartment building or condominium, and maybe some townhouses similar to what's being proposed. I think it references further down Midland, which I'm not sure exactly what site, but I suspect it's actually the site being developed by the same applicant who's seeking approvals. The fundamental difference between the two sites is the official plan designation. So on the other site that they're referring to is designated arterial commercial, which permits medium and high density residential if certain criteria are met. Within business parks and employment and designations, residential is not permitted in the official plan. And generally speaking, to amend the official plan to redesignate employment plans to permit residential involves a substantial process called comprehensive review. So I think that would need to be looked at in the scope of a much broader study and likely the City of Kingston's next official plan update to determine whether it makes sense to remove land from employment lands and convert it to residential. So all that to say no, because the planning policy doesn't support residential here currently, but it could be looked at in the next OP update.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor. I saw Councillor Hutchison and then Councillor Neal.
Okay, thanks very much, Mr. Chair. I just want to back up what Councillor Sanik said. We've had 2 commercial land studies that I can remember, probably 3 since the time we've been on council. And I attended those meetings and read the reports, and we have far more commercial than we as a city need. The province doesn't like it. They tell us that. And we also pay a heavy price to develop these employment plans. And that's why they're so important. Well, that's one of the reasons they're so important. But you've got to have jobs for people as well. So I'm not sure why this application should be approved. I mean, it's convenient to the proponent, but it doesn't seem altogether convenient to the city. So I think there's sometimes an attitude that we, it's all employment. Well, good planning suggests otherwise, and the province suggests otherwise. So my question is, if there my questions are following on what Councillor Sanik said. The first thing I have to ask about is the gas station. This is threatening to become a stranded asset. Why would you want to build a gas station, aside from the fundamental thing that there are 2 gas stations immediately nearby, right? Do you have any plans at all for an electrical charging station? I mean, I'm not accepting your premise, which is that this should be commercial. I don't accept that. The complementary uses are for complementary reasons, okay? So anyway, why the gas station just seems retrograde to me.
So Councillor, your question is about charging stations, is that correct?
Correct.
Thank you, and through the chair, charging stations are being considered, and I think it's something that needs to be looked at in detail with prospective tenants of this development. So the developer is here tonight and listening, and we'll look to include them potentially in the future plans when they have prospective tenants lined up for those spaces.
So my next question is, why so many parking spaces for building B? You've got 110 parking spaces. The city has got a new parking study. It's connected to the residential primarily, but the idea is that parking costs money and we should be restricting this. What's the argument for so many spaces in this, so many parking spaces in this development?
Thank you, and through the chair, the parking being provided just meets the zoning bylaw requirement for how many spaces are required for office use based on the gross floor area proposed. So we're not, if we were to provide less, we would need an amendment to the zoning bylaw because we wouldn't be meeting the minimum requirement. We haven't looked at reducing it through an amendment because we can meet the amount required on site. The The site has decent access to public transit. It's not located immediately on a transit route, but it's within 600 meters, which is kind of on the edge of what we consider now to be walkable distance. So, you know, we do expect, based on the location of this site, that at least right now, many folks will be accessing these office buildings by personal vehicle. So that's why we didn't provide less than the minimum requirement of surface parking.
Okay. So I have severe questions about the residential suggestion. I don't think that's something that also interferes with the commercial industrial balance as well. So so you gave the answer you're going to give for that for the time being to Councillor Sanik, so I'm not going to repeat it. So my main question is actually more directed to staff, like I don't see what are the advantages of the city of this development? I just don't really see it. Thank you.
I believe Ms. Robideau, yep, I see you popping up after you.
Yeah, thank you through Mr. Chair. Thank you for your question, Councillor Hutchison. As you know, this application is very much still under technical review. We haven't yet issued any technical comments to the applicant on their submission. That'll be forthcoming after this meeting. So I think given that we're not really able to indicate, you know, support for the application as of yet, one way or the other. Obviously, per usual, the details of that will be forthcoming in the comprehensive report once we've had a chance to undergo the technical review process and determine whether this application does meet the intent of the official plan and the zoning bylaw and is ultimately good land use planning.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hutchison. Councillor Neal.
Thank you. I appreciate Councillor Hutchison's comments about gas stations. If we achieve or come anywhere near achieving the targets we've set for ourselves for getting away from fossil fuels, there will be stranded assets. And so it's really difficult to rationalize a gas station in an area that already has gas stations if we're truly going to be reaching out for that. Is the gas station is that a done deal? Can you achieve development within that site without the gas station, if it comes to that?
Thank you. And through the chair, I think the applicant would say it's almost a done deal in the sense that they do have a particular gas station tenant who has indicated interest in locating on this site. So there is interest there. There's obviously a market there to locate a gas station and convenience store on this site. So yeah.
The difficulty may be that given the priorities set by the city, it might not be a done deal for the city. The other question I have is this a development that will require any kind of site plan on it? Will there indeed be a site plan discussion in the comprehensive report?
Through the chair, site plan control approval is required for every aspect of this development.
Okay, thank you. I'm not a planner, so I didn't know that. Thank you. My last question is, I thought I heard a little bit of hesitancy about the idea of charging stations. And again, that is given our priorities. When this comes to comprehensive for approval, do you anticipate that there will be considerations such as green roof or charging stations?
I think it's certainly something I can take back and see if there's an appetite to commit to that at this point. I think the challenge is not knowing fully who the prospective tenants will be of this development will be a challenge, but we'll take that back and provide that in response for yours and staff's review prior to the comprehensive report.
Get an appetite to approve the comprehensive. I'll be looking for charging stations at that location. Thank you.
Thank you.
Seeing no other hands, or Councillor Chappelle, sorry, you had your hand up earlier. Yep, I recognize you. You're on mute, Councillor Chappelle. Start again, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The elusive mute button always seems to get me at every one of these meetings. Anyways, I have a couple of comments and questions. With respect to the access points, I notice it's coming off Creekford Road, and then there's another back access that would allow you to get out to the offices through the neighboring property with the City of Kingston, which makes sense. With Creekford Road's redevelopment coming, will there be a concrete barrier preventing that access, or is that being contemplated that it's going to be beyond the barrier and allow access from Creekford Road? So that's the one question. The second question is, initially when I thought about this project, I would have thought that an access point coming off of Gardner's Road would make sense because they have the lights and they're supposed to slow down to a slower speed. So I'm wondering whatever happened to that proposal, if they were able to work something out with the Ministry of Transportation, because they own that intersection basically at Creekford Road and Gardner's. And then the other comment was I actually looked at this proposal, and as the councillor from this district, I actually thought it made a lot of sense having the office spaces for like 2,000 square feet. You know, I did like the 2-story building, and I thought they have the complementary gas station with the convenience store would service that entire market. And I thought it made sense as a proposal because it is quite difficult and challenging for a resident to cut across that corner at that busy intersection. So if they needed something like a fast food type opportunity for dining or a packaged sandwich or a snack, to me it made sense. So I'm really just perplexed with some of my fellow colleagues' comments tonight. And if you're talking about stranded assets, I think we need to have a larger conversation about the stranded assets of Kingston Utilities, gas power.
Councillor Chappelle, sorry to interrupt you, but let's keep it to the file before us. So Ms. Wood,
I'm just using their own words. So that is my comment. So those are the access points I'm concerned about. And then, you know, it's right now it's a vacant property that it's good for redevelopment. So that's my perspective.
Ms. Wood.
Thank you, Councillor Chappelle, and through you. If the clerk would be so kind as to pull up slide 4 again, please. So as you note, there are 2 entrances currently proposed, which would still continue to work the same way even after improvements to Creekford Road are completed, which are planned to happen. So the main entrance, which is located right off of Creekford Road, kind of central to the site, would be a right in, right out only in this location. And then you can see the northmost drive aisle that goes east-west. You can see an opening to the west. So that's the entrance through to the city-owned lands. And then that connects to a full turn entry exit onto Creekford Road. So that would continue even after improvements. So there's a pretty significant widening that's considered for Creekford Road that would facilitate additional turning lanes at Gardner and Creekford, as well as probably the introduction of a new dedicated left turning lane into the existing city-owned lands entrance. So that would all sort of stay the same even after the improvements are expected. I do know, and even you can see on that plan where on the right-hand side where it says Midland, where the road has been contemplated to come straight through and give this site frontage on Midland. I'm not sure the status of the, any changes to that, but currently that's continues to be an unopened road allowance. And the site's, access and entrance isn't contingent on that opening up. But if it did, it would provide further access points to the site in the future.
Councillor Chappelle, any follow-up questions?
No, my one question I did have has already been answered. I've noticed there's a trend with gas stations also including electrical charging stations as that transitions into that the new way, and I was satisfied with the response from the applicant. So that's fine. I'm glad to hear that they'll contemplate some charging stations.
Great, thanks so much. And I'll just remind committee before we go to Councillor Hill that staff is still undergoing technical review, and some of these questions can be more fully addressed at a later point. Councillor Hill.
Thank you, Chair. My question is actually just a process question. I'm trying to understand where the kind of the business plan discussions sort of fit into the land use planning. My understanding was that the business plan was sort of up to the proponent. Whether it's successful or not is sort of on them, and our discussions were to be around land use, and I'm just not sure where the overlap might be. So I'm just looking for clarification around that. Not that I don't think it should be a part of the discussion. I just didn't think it was supposed to be. So I just wondered if I could get some clarification on that.
Yeah, maybe we'll ask Ms. Robidoux or Mr. Park or Mr. Barr, who are with us from staff, to take that one.
Certainly, through you, Mr. Chair, I can jump in, and then if my colleagues, Mr. Barr or Mr. Park, have anything to add, I would welcome them to do so. I think, obviously, with any planning application, we're looking at it in the context of provincial policy, as well as our municipal policies in the official plan and in the zoning bylaw. And so we're looking at compatibility of the proposal in terms of the context surrounding it. This particular site is designated for business park industrial uses in the official plan. And so I think primarily we're looking at the proposal in terms of how it satisfies the intent of that land use designation. Certainly viability of a development is important. But I think ultimately the way that the official plan would look at it would be more so in terms of a compatibility lens, as opposed to the way in which the financial pro forma ultimately lends itself. But I see Mr. Park has put his camera on.
Thank you, Ms. Robidoux, and everything you said is entirely true. One other way to sort of look at it is, we can't really predetermine the applicant's business plan for them, much the same way if it was a residential development, we can't tell them it has to be a condominium tenure versus a rental. That's a business decision by the applicant. So we really, as Ms. Robidoux has outlined, we are looking at the proposed application based on its compatibility with provincial policy statement, the official plan policies, and then the fit of the zoning of what's being proposed. Thank you.
So in this case, like, we're talking about a gas station. So, the use of the land for the purpose of putting a gas station there, as opposed to, say, putting some other kind of business there, is that something that we discuss, and like, is that something that's up for discussion or part of the consideration, I guess, of approval for this particular land use? You see what I mean? Am I making sense here?
Yeah. Yes, you are. Through you, Mr. Chair. Yes, that is part of the consideration in this proposal.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
I see a point of order, Councillor Neal.
Actually, I'm not sure it's a legitimate point of order. I wanted to make a comment, but we're not restricted to just one kick at the can here, are we?
That's correct. So if
Okay,
everyone's done, we can come back to you for questions.
Thank you. I guess in reference to Councillor Hill's point, We also have established goals that are part of our municipal policy. And that includes moving with set targets towards reducing our dependence on fossil fuels. And so therefore, I would argue that it is legitimate to talk about that, because as Councillor Hutchison has pointed out, if we achieve those goals, there will be all kinds of stranded assets of gas stations in town. And so I think, and again, Mr. Park can correct me if I'm wrong, but we have to take into consideration those goals that we've set for ourselves when it comes to municipal priorities. And one of those municipal priorities is lowering our dependence on fossil fuels.
Neil, are you asking how the strategic plan dovetails with the OP or the land use planning at play?
Exactly. So am I accurate in that consideration, Mr. Park? Or I'm sorry, Megan. Thank you.
Ms. Robideau, yes, after you.
No problem. Thank you, and through you, Mr. Chair. As is the case with all planning applications before the city, the official plan does require proponents to demonstrate how that proposal will prepare for the impacts of a changing climate. And so that is something that we'll be looking for through technical review of this application. It'll be something that we'll be looking within the submitted planning justification report to be demonstrated.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Neil. Any other questions from councillors? Oh, Councillor Hutchison.
I unmute myself twice. Okay, I just want to make clear that that what Councillor Sennick and I were talking about is not just about gas station. I believe she just used it as an example, and which sticks out in this application. I just and I want staff to look at this carefully. I mean, what is the relationship? Like we just talked about the relationship of our climate change policies to the official plan and to applications of this sort. And in the future, I think we're going to have this sort of thing is going to be more and more acute. But it's also got to do, what I was trying to get at is the city has policies around commercial and industrial land and how much money we're going to spend to develop each. And as I said before, it's been made very clear that we have an excess relative to population and need of commercial development. So, and I think people find that surprising, but there are other cities our size, they don't have this it's considered an imbalance. So my question to staff is this: what is the relationship between those policies around and those the studies done? I can't remember the name of that commercial study. If you got that at the top of your head, that would be useful. And any determinations to be done about the official plan designation and the zoning, which of course this boils down to eventually. So my question is, Mr. Park.
Through you, Mr. Chair. I just want to maybe, go over sort of the intention of tonight's meeting. It is a public meeting, and the intention behind the public meeting is for the applicant to present their proposal to the planning committee as well as the public. And the function of this meeting is then to feedback and comments, such as the ones that we are hearing now. Staff are hearing them, they're recording them, and they will be addressed in the comprehensive report when it comes back to committee. At this point in time, for staff to actually formulate an opinion, not having the benefit of having the technical review of this application would be premature at this time. So I'm going to reserve giving any response at this point in time and say these questions that are being raised will be addressed in the comprehensive report when it is brought back to committee. Thank you.
Continue, Councillor Hutchison. You have lots of time.
I have a follow-up, and so the answer may be exactly the same, but I was asking for a more technical response of how those commercial land policies and council's approach to those and the city's approach to those things impacts this kind of application. Like, where does it come in to the consideration about whether this proposal or some version of this proposal is to be approved or not? I thought that was a technical question, and I didn't expect an opinion so much as a description of the process.
Through you, Mr. Chair, and fair question, Councillor Hutchison. These policies, if when the city reviews the application, the applicable policies within the official plan, the application is reviewed against them. And there is a preliminary list of the OP policies and provincial policies attached to the report, which are reviewed in consideration of the application.
Okay.
All right, I saw Councillor Neal's hand up again, but I want to give Councillor Chappelle and Osanik this round 2 opportunity. Seeing none. Okay, round 3, Councillor Neal.
Just a very quick question that I overlooked asking before. If you've heard tonight the reality that we have surplus commercial space, we don't have enough residential. I'm wondering if the proponent would be willing to expand the envelope for the office space by adding, taking away a floor and adding a couple of floors for residential. Whether that would be something that he might wish to consider, and I'm not trying to nail down an answer right now, but if that could be a consideration leading into the comprehensive report. Ms. Wood?
Back for consideration. Thank you, Councillor Neal.
Thank you.
Councillor Chappelle.
My comments are just more of a commentary. I don't think it's really.
Councillor Chappelle, sorry to interrupt you, but this is a public meeting. We try to keep it to questions as much as we can because we don't have any recommendation to comment on. So if you can make it.
No. So my question then, Mr. Chair, is why does this committee seem incumbent to question a proposal brought forward on its merits rather than the policy arguments of climate change? I don't understand that. That's just my question.
Perhaps that's a question best for staff. Mr. Park, if we could start with you.
Through you, Mr. Chair, Councillor Chappelle, I would ask that you repeat the question, please. Sorry.
I'm questioning how a proposal by a proponent has been brought forward to this committee has been sidelined onto a premise on public policy on climate change and not on the merits of the proposal.
Point of order, Councillor Hill.
I don't think that's a question that staff can answer. I think
Fair
that's
enough.
a political question. Yeah.
No, I agree. Actually, as I heard it again, I agree with that. So Councillor Chappelle, I don't know if I can speak for the committee myself, so let's just leave that as rhetorical.
I'll leave it open. I'll just leave it open out there in the air. How's that?
Fair enough. Last call for questions from committee. All right, so we agreed earlier in the evening that we will go back to the potential for public to ask questions. Madam Clerk, are there any members of the public who would like to participate at this point?
Mr. Chair, I don't see any hands just at this time, but we'll do one final call. If there are any members of the public who would like to speak, ask questions, provide comment to the application on the floor, if you could please raise your hand in Zoom. Again, this is located in the center of your screen when you move the mouse over the window. There are no hands, Mr. Chair.
All right, thank you very much. We'll adjourn this portion of the meeting, the public meeting. Thank you, Ms. Wood. Thank you, committee members, but we'll move into our official planning committee meeting. So we'll call the meeting to order at 6:55 p.m. Could I have a mover and seconder for approval of the agenda, please? Councillor Chappelle, Councillor Hill, all those in favor? Thank you. Confirmation of the minutes that are here before us. A mover and seconder for that, please.
Sorry, Mr. Chair, to interrupt. There are no minutes to be confirmed at this meeting.
Oh, my apologies. Thank you. So I take that back. And we'll continue going. There are no minutes. So are there any disclosures of pecuniary interests? Seeing none, no delegations, no briefings, no business, no motions, no notices of motion, as long as I'm not seeing any hands flying in the air. Nope. Alrighty. Other business, none. There is some correspondence that's noted in the agenda and was received in your package. So with that, I'll say that the date of the next meeting is February 3rd at 6 p.m. and look for a mover and seconder to adjourn. Councillor Hill and Councillor Neal, all those in favor? Very good. Thanks very much, and we will see you soon. Stay warm.